Good evening, everybody, and thank you very much for being here, and thank you very much for those of you that are listening to the recording afterwards. Tonight we have the lovely Rudi with us. So Rudi came across the principles quite a while ago, and I have known Rudi for a little while actually, and then we actually managed to spend 4 days together at a retreat a couple of weeks ago, which was an absolute treat for me. I really loved that. And we went for coffee afterwards, a little group of us, and got to know Rudi even a little bit more. So I would love, Rudi, if you don't mind, if you just share a little bit, anything that is making sense to you that you're seeing around the principles at the moment, because there are definitely going to be some people that probably listen to this recording that don't really know an awful lot about the principles or are relatively new to it. And the idea for me behind these webinars is that people who maybe don't know who you are or don't really know a lot about the principles can hear it from you, hear what you're seeing, what's making sense to you.
Well, thank you very much. Well, thank you so much for the invite. And I guess what's making sense to me at the moment, well, I guess for the newer people, my understanding of the three principles is really that it gives words or a language to explain how the human experience works. And you might think, well, why is that helpful? But there's something about knowing how something works. It can work a lot. And we walk around in life, and wherever we are, whether we're on a beach in Thailand or a tower block in Hackney or something, like our heads are with us. So no matter where we are, no matter who we're with, we're experiencing what's in our heads in the moment. So understanding what's going on up there helps us have a much nicer experience of wherever we are and whoever we're with. And so it seems insane to me that people don't know really what's going on in our heads. There's lots of ideas and theories about what's going on in our heads, but this understanding points to the innate or the natural, I guess, understanding of how everything is created. You know, our experience of our past, our experience of possible future, our experience of people in the perception of the world out there, our current thinking in the moment. It's all created within our minds, within our perception. And so really it's an understanding of how that works. And I came across it about 13 years ago, and have been teaching it for a while now, maybe about 6 or 7 years.
Okay.
So, that's it in a nutshell.
Okay. So you've been teaching this for 6 or 7 years. What kind of people have you been teaching it to, and what difference has it made in their lives? You know, when people begin to understand the principles and begin to see for themselves how life works, what do you see shifts and changes for people?
Well, I've had the pleasure of videoing, kind of documenting this understanding all over the world, literally all over the world, and in populations like jails, prisons, schools, addiction centres, homeless shelters, corporations, high school, really right across the board. And I guess the main thing that people say is that they just having a much more pleasant life experience. And so some people, their issues will drop, other people, their addiction dissolves, some people are less stressed, other people, when you get rid of the specifics, fundamentally people are having a much nicer life experience. And the global impact of that, I guess, is that when we're feeling better, we generally act better and we're nicer to other people. And so the personal impact is really a byproduct of what could be a completely global impact, whereby communities, I mean, one community that I filmed in California had the fourth highest homicide rate per capita in the nation. And this understanding was taken in about 15 years ago, and there hasn't been one homicide there since then. So it's enormously powerful when we understand this innate or this natural power that we have within us, this this power that works psychologically and emotionally, but fundamentally it's a spiritual power enlivening us.
Wow. So yeah, I mean, I just love that about the principles, how it is for everybody. It looks to me like if you're a human being and if you're here and if you're alive, then this understanding is going to make your life make more sense. Whatever, it just kind of seems to do that, seems to bring people to a better place somehow. They do have a nicer, kinder, more lighter experience maybe of life. So could you share, if there's people listening on here and they're kind of going, well, what is this understanding then? What are the principles? What is it? Can you share anything with us? I mean, I know, we haven't got loads and loads of time, but if there's people, can you share for us what something that might start somebody's understanding? What would you point them towards? What can you share with us that might help someone tonight who's listening, who might be struggling with something? Or
well, I guess I could conceptually define what the three principles are and how they work, but often that's not that helpful for people because it's more kind of conceptual. But an implication or a side effect of this understanding would be knowing that every single person on earth is creating their experience from within. And I could call that thought, or you could call that perception. Perception is creating an experience of what's happening out there. That's how, when you talk to people, everyone's got a very different idea of the world, of Donald Trump, of what's happening in the government, of Brexit. Like, there's all these facts happening in the world, but everyone's got quite different opinions of them. And so these opinions, so to speak, it's coming from thinking about the stuff in the world. So everyone just thinks different. And because everyone thinks different, everyone's living in a different personal reality of what's going on in the world. So just knowing that we're not really living in reality, we're living in this personal constructed reality of life, and we're believing it to be true. Now, I'm not saying it is true or isn't true. I'm just saying that we're the ones constructing this personal reality of life. We're not really experiencing life. We experience thought about life. That is how our perception of ourselves, of our partners, of our work, of our boss, of the political situation can really change in the moment, depending on how we're feeling. Because as our emotions or our moods go low, we can have a much more negative view of everything. And as they go up, we can have a much more positive view of everything. So there's nothing in the world that's actually changed. All that's changed is your perception or your thinking in the moment is very, very different. So one helpful point about that is, just because we think it doesn't mean it's necessarily true. It just means that that's what we're going to believe to be true. And there's something about seeing that every single person, all 7.2 billion of us, have a thought, believe it to be true, and then we run with that. But seeing that when you think something and believe it to be true, other people are doing that too. So you have to realize that we are walking around on earth believing that we're right.
Okay.
And so when you get difference of opinion, all that's happening is that because you think you're right, you try and cajole or kind of threaten or persuade people to fundamentally think like you're thinking. That's all it is. Because you're right, you naturally assume that you're right, so they need to think like you, and then they'll be right too. But the fact
that could make life yes, that does make life interesting.
But the fact is that you're just thinking it. It's a construction of your mind, and this isn't about what is right and what's the right and what's the wrong opinion. It's just saying that we think it, and it looks and it feels and it appears true. Now, just seeing that allows us to embrace diversity and embrace other people's opinions, because you know innocently we have a thought, believe it to be true. Other people innocently have a thought and they believe it to be true too. So there's absolutely no point in trying to make people think like you, because it's arrogant. You just presume that you're more right than other people.
Yeah. I can see that, you know, that's like earlier on I was kind of saying we have a softer experience of life. And I think that kind of adds to that softer experience of life, because we can accept that, you know, we can see that actually our opinion is a construct. Our opinion is, and it does feel, you know, it does, thinking, you know, it amazes me when we have a thought how it appears in our head and it kind of announces its truth. It doesn't kind of say to you, oh, I'm a thought, you know, you can take me or leave me. It kind of comes and says, I'm a truth. Take me. End of. It's so you can understand why it's very easy to kind of believe what's in your head that is truth. So I think that's quite, I know when I first heard about separate realities and the way that everybody sees things differently, that was a huge, I was like, really? People, you know, I would look at people doing things and I would assume that they were thinking the same way as me, and then wondering why they didn't act like I did. And it's like, why would you do that? Why would you ever do that? And then when I began to realize that actually they were seeing a totally different thing to what I was seeing, and given that they're seeing something different, it does explain why they're doing what they're doing. And that also took an awful lot off the table for me, because, you know, when people would do things that I didn't like, I would kind of try and follow and work out why it was they were doing what they were doing, you know. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh, they're having different thinking than me. That's it. There's nowhere else to go with it. Kind of left me with a part-time job instead of these hours that I would spend unpicking why.
I love that, and that's a really good point. You know, because for example, my ex-partner, we had very different work ethics. I used to, because we worked from home, we've got a home office. I got up at 8 or 7 or 8. I got ready. I was in the office, which is basically the spare room, for 9 o'clock, and I worked until 12. Then I had an hour off, and I worked until 5, and that was my day done. She kind of woke up when she'd finished sleeping, and she swanned in, and she kind of did a bit, then went for a walk and came back and did a bit, went to see a friend and came back and did a bit more. And it used to drive me insane. It's like, well, because I had the right work ethic.
Obviously.
So let's look at that for a minute. When I questioned her about it, is that she said, I can't be creative if I spend more than an hour in front of the computer. My head gets foggy. I need to just get away from it. And I come back and I feel refreshed. Also, it saps my energy, and I just need to go out into the world and then come back again. And so she did all these things. And when you really looked at it, she probably did almost, or maybe, yeah, probably about a similar amount of work to me, but she just did it in a very different way to the way I was doing it. Because I worked on the computer until my eyes were bleeding. I mean, that's an exaggeration. I soldiered through and got it done. But then my productivity went down and down and down, the more fatigued and cloudy-headed that I got. So I could spend 2 hours in there, and she could do the same thing in 2 hours and 20 minutes. And so I didn't see at that time that just because I had an idea of a work ethic, I just presumed I was right and she was wrong. Now I'm saying, oh, we think different, and so we're going to do things differently. Yeah. And so a side effect or an implication of seeing the nature of thought is that it drops judgment. I can honestly say that's one of the biggest things. Is I generally don't judge other people. And like I used to think, well, you know, if you loved, you know, athletics and cricket, you were cool. And if you liked football, then you weren't. Or if you wore these kinds of clothes, like if you wore tracksuits and trainers on the high street and you didn't wear trousers, then you were that kind of, had all this thinking about what people did and what it meant about them. Now I just see there's a man wearing trainers and running stuff in the high street, full stop. Like it's an observation rather than a judgment. So my life's become more observational, and I don't think I'm right most of the time. Well, actually, no, I'll take that back. I do think I'm right, but then I remember, like, oh, yes. And things like, personal preference, like, I've got this on, some people will like it, other people won't like it. I'm completely fine for people not to have my preference on things. Like, people don't have to think like me for me to have a connection with them, because there's a deeper spiritual connection beyond what we think. And that's what's most important. It's that common humanity that we have.
Yeah, I love it when you're kind of saying that the judgment drops, because I used to be so judgmental, and I was very, very harshly judgmental of myself. And I've seen that in so many people, that we're very, we can be very, very judgmental of ourselves. And that's, again, it's just, if we just begin to see, oh, so yeah, I'm thinking like that. Like you just said, sometimes, you will see something and think, oh yeah, that's just the way that I'm thinking in this moment. And then when we we're very, very good at adding meaning into things, aren't we? Obviously, if you love me, you would, it's kind of, everything that people do and everything we do, it's kind of, we add on this extra therefore, or it means, or it was. And like you say, as we begin to see that we're just thinking differently. And it was interesting when you were talking about you and your ex-partner, you were talking about this, and to me, I was kind of listening, and it was like, what I saw then was, oh, neither of you are necessarily right. It's not that what she does is right, and it wasn't that you saw, oh, maybe she's right and I'm wrong. It's just, oh, there's just two different things going on here. It's not that it's right to work for an hour and go out for a walk, and wrong, or whichever way around. It's just, oh, that's just different, and both are perfectly okay or not, or what. It's just the way that you're looking at it, the way that you're thinking about it. So it's very much like not trying to persuade somebody to see the world the way that you see it, or not necessarily thinking that you need to see the world the way someone else does. Equally, it's not.
Yeah, I love that, because that's another really, really good point there. That what I love about this is it isn't an instruction manual on what to do in life. It's more like a construction manual. It's showing you how things are constructed, how we work. And then it's up to us what we do with that information. Because I think anything that tells people what to do is assuming that the person's broken, or they're not okay as they are. Whereas seeing the nature of this experience, that it's a construction, and you get rid of what you should and shouldn't do, and you get rid of advice, you realize yourself in the moment. Like, for instance, I'm dating someone at the moment, and she's got very different thinking to me. She's Polish, she's got very different culture, she does very different things to me, she's got very different interests. And before, I wouldn't have gone out with somebody like that, because she needed to be this, and this. And I realized when you get rid of that, and that, you've just got the connection beyond the words, beyond the beliefs, beyond the thought. And that's enough. And it's nice to be around people who think similar to you, absolutely, for that connection. But the potential, our innate potential as humanity, is to connect beyond belief systems. And as we connect beyond belief systems, beyond cultures, beyond religions, beyond ways of thinking, you've just got love again, you've just got connection, and it will be the end of all conflict. There will be conflict and there will be suffering, but it will never get to the point where it's physically harmful for people, because from this perspective, it does not make sense to harm other people.
I love that. And I mean, that is so hopeful for the world, really, isn't it? Like, I mean, earlier you said, you've been teaching this across the board to all sorts of people. And that's what I really, really see. I see And to me, it starts with us, the one, you know, whoever is listening to this. It starts with, I can really see that just when I first came across this, I was very much in a place where, you know, you should know this and you should know this and you should know this. You know, and now I just see, do you know what? The only person that really needs to know this for me is me. And just, if I start with me and I look in this direction and I begin to be more gentle with the people around me, I begin to be less judgmental of myself and less judgmental of others. Somehow or other, people, I mean, look on this call tonight, you know, already here, there's what, I don't know how many people, there's a fair few people listening now, and other people are going to hear it. And that is just from me looking in this direction, me just doing this for me. And then it kind of spills out and spills out. And I think that there is so much hope for the world when we just kind of decide to understand the truth of who we are. And that's all it needs to be. Just what I want to understand the truth of who I am. And it looks to me like when you kind of said, we don't assume that people are broken. We don't assume that there's anything wrong. What I have seen for myself and what I love to point people towards is the fact that they've got everything within them that they need. And when I started to want to know the truth about who I was and looked in this direction, it seemed to me, if I asked those questions of myself, the answers came. You know, I didn't need necessarily a teacher. It's very helpful in like these webinars. I love sharing and I love talking with people, and I think it's brilliant to do that. But it's just, I like people to remind me that who I am, and I like to remind myself. One of the reasons why I like to, oh yeah, that's me. I've got wisdom. I've got everything that it takes, and it's easy to forget that and easy to kind of go outside. But it's really good to talk with people who are just pointing you back to the truth of who you are.
I know it's such a different paradigm, because the current paradigm is looking at ill health, it's looking at where we're broken, it's looking at our issues, it's looking at we need to get better to be happy. And this is working in the completely opposite direction. It's drawing out the health and wisdom within. This system that's enlivening us, this spiritual nature within us, that force, or that life force, or that connection, or whatever you want to call that energy, that's the same for everybody. There's nobody more spiritual than anyone else. It's just that some people have a whole bunch of noise in the system, or a whole bunch of thinking telling them that they're broken, telling them they have issues. And of course, there may well have been a physical thing happen in the past. There may have been a trauma. I'm not discounting the facts that these things do happen in the world.
Yeah.
But after the fact of them actually happening, we're only living in a thought about what had happened to us in this present moment. And as we see that thought isn't telling us who we are or what we're capable of, it's just giving us a construction of who we think we are and what we think we're capable of. That is how you can take anybody, like Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, Nelson Mandela. You can take any person, give them the most horrific conditioning and the upbringings, and we've got lots of stories of people completely going beyond that and being real beacons of light for the world. So it is not what's happening, it's not what's happened to you that makes you who you are. It's purely thought in the moment after the fact of that. It's just thought carried through time. And seeing the nature of thought makes that thinking less of an instruction and more of a construction. It's like, oh, okay, just because I'm thinking it doesn't mean to say it's true. Just because I'm thinking it doesn't mean to say I'm like this.
That is just, and yeah, I mean, that is just, it's amazing when you start to see that. And it's like, what I've kind of seen is that just because we have that thinking, I've really noticed for myself that my mind can be doing it. I can have that thinking in my mind, you know, all sorts of things. And yet it doesn't stop me being this creative essence of the universe, or this power, or whatever it is you want to see. And whereas before I thought, if I had a thought, oh, I'm stupid, then that would mean I'm stupid. So then I would have to, not have a conversation with you, because how could I do that because I'm stupid, or not share with people, whatever. I would have to live from that thought, that belief, oh yeah, I'm stupid, so I can't do this. And now equally, I can have the thought I'm stupid and go, oh yeah, that's an interesting thought. Right, let's get on with life. Let's get on with being this creative essence. Let's get on with doing what it is we're truly capable of. And I've noticed that, we can't change the truth of who we are just because we have a thought. But before, when I had that thinking, it looked so real and true and felt so real and true. I didn't realize, I didn't notice that, oh, I didn't have to do that. And that's been huge for me to kind of see that, yeah, it can be there. And somehow then, the more I see that, I'm not entirely sure, if I'm honest with you, whether there's less of that thinking or whether I notice it less. I can't honestly put my hand up and say there's definitely less of it, or whether, oh, I'm just not sure if I don't take any notice of it anymore. So maybe it is there and I don't know.
Well, I think as a metaphor, it's a bit like we've all had conditioning. We've all had stuff happen in the past that we don't like. You just need to walk outside to the high street and we're bombarded with conditioning about what makes you happy and what you should look like. And it's all bollocks, to be quite honest. But unconsciously we take it and believe it to be true. Where was I going with this? I completely lost my train of thought.
It was good, though.
I need to have a think about that. Where was I going with that?
Well, while you're thinking about that, we've been talking for kind of about half an hour, so I've just put it out there. If anyone has got a question, if anyone wants to ask anything, if anyone's got a comment or wants to share anything, they've kind of been listening to what we've been saying and something's made sense, they want to share it, comment, ask any questions, you can either unmute yourself, or there's a chat box at the bottom of the screen. You can put a question in the chat box if you want to. But, we're more than happy to open up the conversation. It's just, if I unmute everybody, it gets a little bit noisy, but anybody is very, very welcome to join in the conversation, ask questions, please feel free to do so. So did you remember where you're training?
I've remembered, and then we'll go to questions. That would be great. Oh. So what I was saying was, so we have this conditioning happening, and before this understanding, the conditioning in my head was a bit like a wise professor who I looked up to, and what he said was meaningful and real, and I should act on it. Like the thinking in my head, the voice in my head, the negative conditioning seems so real. And now it's a bit like, I don't know if you've been out to the pub and you've got your friend gets really drunk and they're going, I love you, and they're kind of saying all this stuff, and you end up putting them over your shoulder and dragging them home. The negative voice sounds a bit more like that now, where you don't really take much notice of it because it's drunk. You don't have to break your patterns, you don't have to get rid of your issues, you don't have to clear your past, because that's a lot of work. You can actually have that kind of thinking in the moment coming up, and you can just get on with it, like you said, and do stuff anyway. Because if we waited until we were perfect and got our stuff sorted, we would never do anything. How about we just did stuff regardless of what's going on in our heads anyway?
Yeah, I love that. That's kind of something that I've seen more clearly fairly recently, that the whole, oh yeah, I don't have to have my head's agreement, actually.
Exactly.
to just get on and do stuff, to say I'm going to have a webinar every weekend, every week, to say I'm going to speak to somebody, say, yeah, I don't have to have my head agreeing with that. It's great that we can just do this stuff. Yeah, that's really. So I don't know. Right, everybody seems to be very, very quiet. Would anybody like to ask a question, or shall we just? I'm happy to just keep on talking. I'm like. So I know you mentioned earlier, Rudi. You mentioned that about filming. I know that filming is something that you do. And when we were when we were chatting at the retreat note there, you said that you had got a project that you would absolutely love to move forward with, a project about a film. Do you want to share a little bit about that? See what it is you're going to be trying to get up to with your filming.
Yeah, so I guess briefly, I want to create a infomentary meaning a cross between a cinematic movie and a documentary. And so it will really be a really user-friendly, interesting, funny, entertaining, but deep and clarifying, acted out with actors and actresses on locations and people kind of talking a bit like we are at the moment about the nature of human experience. It'll be about an hour and 20 minutes long. It'll go up for free for people to watch, and I think potentially it will be the first movie of its kind to specifically look at what we're talking about here in very plain, simple, user-friendly terms, packaged in a way that's just really helpful for people. So I am starting to film at springtime next year, and then I'm hoping to get it out by towards the end of 2019. Might be early. We'll see how it goes. So that's something that I'm passionate about, because as people wake up to the nature of where experience is coming from, as people wake up more and more to the spiritual essence that they truly are, it alleviates an enormous amount of unnecessary human suffering. And in the absence of suffering, you've got love. In the absence of misunderstanding, you have understanding and clarity. And in the absence of people just not feeling very good, people are going to be feeling better. And this could be like another webinar, but it's okay to feel bad, and there can be a freedom and an okayness with feeling bad also. So for people to have any human experience, the good and the bads and the highs, the low, with freedom in that moment, it is enormously liberating for people, and it will be enormously helpful for the world and for the global community, because if we don't stop doing a lot of the stupid things that we're doing, we're not going to have a global community. So we do, but I think instead of looking at the negative, it's like Mother Teresa asked if she go on an anti-war march, and said, no, I'll never go on an anti-war march, but I go on a peace rally. Whatever you see around you, you have to do the reverse. So this is my kind of offering, so to speak, of the reverse of what's going on in a lot of places. I mean, there's an enormous amount of beautiful stuff happening as well, and I'm going to have some of that in the movie, so I'm quite excited about it. Yeah,
that sounds brilliant. I think that's amazing, because I don't know if there's anyone on here who doesn't know about the movie site that you've already got, the Three Principles movie site. I mean, I point people towards that. It's an absolutely amazing source of information about what we've been talking about tonight, and there's like interviews with all sorts of people across the board on there. And I know for me personally, when I came across this, that was hugely helpful for me to, so thank you very much. That was a great thing for me to listen to some of the interviews and the filming that you've done. But like you said, you came across this 13 years ago, and some of those films now, you might want to kind of update them a little bit. So not that the understanding we're pointing to ever kind of changes or gets out of date, but it's interesting. I think our own understanding, I know for me personally, like a few times I've kind of started to write a book, and then when I've gone back to read it, I've kind of thought, well, no, that doesn't make, no, I don't want to write that anymore. That's not how I'm seeing it now, because we're forever moving forward. We're forever seeing this more deeply, seeing it more clearly, and seeing something else. So it is kind of nice to sort of keep that momentum and that movement going forward. So there was something really interesting that you said that's been sort of something shifting and happening for me. It was like when you said about it being perfectly okay not to be okay. And I find this an interesting one. And for me, this feels a little bit like it's a words thing almost, you know, because what I've also seen is when we talk about this and share this, there aren't words that can get across to me adequately what it is we're trying to say. It would be like, you know, if I was trying to just say you were blind and I was trying to describe to you what it's like when the sun comes up in the morning. Even if I was, you know, describing it absolutely, you know, nothing I said was inaccurate, I did it to the absolute letter, did it perfectly, you still wouldn't know the beauty, the amazement, the wonder of what it was that I'm seeing. So it kind of very much looks to me like words can almost get in the way of what it is we're trying to show, because we're trying to say these things, we're trying to describe this most amazing sunset that anyone in the history of the universe has ever seen to a blind person, and we're failing miserably because we've only got these words that just don't cut it, really. They don't kind of get it across. And I know for me, I can see that my life is it's night and day different, and it's better in so many ways. And one of the things that I've realized, it's a kind of like a bit of a conundrum thing how to say it, because I sometimes feel bad, I suppose I could describe it like that, and yet I don't mind. So like when somebody says to you, you know, I think sometimes we can kind of, if somebody says to me, you know, how do you feel? I'm reluctant to say, because I'm kind of like, yeah, I feel really bad actually, but yeah, who cares? I'm not really bothered. And it's not bad. Does that make any sense at all?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, because this life force behind life is completely unconditional. It's complete freedom, absolute freedom, complete unconditional freedom. And because we're a microcosm of the macrocosm, or rather because we're a tiny part of this bigger part, or like we're one cell in a body full of cells, like that freedom is within us as well. But being human, for most of us, I like to say all of us, but I can only really say for most of us, our humanness goes up and down between grief, sadness, have the whole spectrum. But often when we go to like I'll call them like the lower mood, so to speak, that's categorized as just generally feeling crappy and horrible and insecure and whatever, however it shows up for you. It's just not a nice feeling. So as humans, as you know, we our main instinct is to avoid pain and increase pleasure. So when we're having a painful human experience, for some reason we think that's abnormal, or we think it's wrong. We make up meaning about what that means for us. But what would happen, and just hold this lightly, what would happen if being in the human experience and suffering the human experience, sometimes or more than sometimes, that's actually normal? Because when we make it abnormal, we have a whole bunch of thinking that says, I'm broken, there's something wrong with me, I shouldn't be doing this, I don't get the principles, nobody else is like this, it's because of my childhood. You can just go on and on and on and on.
Yeah.
But what would happen if that's just normal? You normalize the human experience, and then you can be in a horrible, crappy mood, and you can just be in a horrible, crappy mood, and at some stage you're not. Full stop. Like this, you don't need to do anything, because the marvelous thing about this life force, or this power within us, is that it self-corrects. Left alone, it self-corrects really well. Like if you cut yourself, you don't need to do anything, it just heals most of the time. Well, psychologically, when we cut ourselves, left alone, that heals too. We don't need to do anything with that. So it's not that you have to trust or have faith in it. It's more seeing the logic that, oh yeah, I just come back to equilibrium. And you know, as a metaphor, one of my students spoke about, she's a pianist, and she said this lovely metaphor about, you know, you've got the high range, you've got the low range, you've got the black keys, and you've got the white keys. When you're trying to perfect the human experience, you're just pressing the white keys at the higher range. Well, the music is going to sound really crap. Whereas if you're using the whole range and the black and the white keys, you've got this grand orchestra of life playing, and it's beautiful. And there is liberation. There's, you know, people who suffer, it can liberate them to help humanity. It can hollow you out for more love. It can humble you. Like, there's nothing wrong with feeling bad. And so when you get rid of the self-judgment of your experience, you can just surf the human experience just as it is, and it's not going to feel nice. But without the judgment, there's just that experience, and it passes. And for me, it's beautiful, because I don't have to have my head be in a particular state of mind to be okay and feel free. There's a freedom and an okayness regardless of what my head does. That is true unconditional freedom. Yeah.
And what I think is just amazing about what we're talking about tonight is that seems to me to be a byproduct of looking in this, just getting curious and looking in this direction. Those kind of things, you know, it's not like we have to think, oh, right, okay, let's not be judgmental anymore. Oh, let's, you know, there isn't a whole load of things. Oh, right, what I need to do then is, you know, not bother about how I feel. When I'm bothered about how I feel, I'm bothered about how I feel. End of. It doesn't look to me like I have to do anything. It is very much like a byproduct of looking in this direction and just getting curious about it. Is all of the things we've been describing, you know, these things that we've been saying, those things just start to be who I am. They just start to be a part of my life. I mean, I didn't kind of one day think, oh, I'll be less judgmental. It just makes less sense to me now to judge as much as I used to. It's not to say I'm never judgmental, but, you know, like you said, it just doesn't make sense a lot of the time for me to do that anymore. But it's not something that I don't watch myself and make sure that I don't judge. It seems to be what shows up for me more. It seems to be that my experience is different, but I'm not doing anything to have a different experience.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, I know that this is quite a big topic, and it's the reverse of what we're taught. So I don't know how much time we've got, but again, like Deborah said, if there's any comments or questions or anything, then that would be really nice.
Yeah, we've had a lot of very quiet participants tonight, haven't we? It's great. It's just me and you, Rudi, having a good old chat. If anybody would like to, you know, add anything to the discussion, if anyone wants to ask a question or anything, then please, you know, feel free to do that, because obviously we have sort of we've opened up a few avenues there.
Yeah, I've got something to say. Shut up.
Hi, Lucy.
Hi. I was just going to talk about what you were going on about with the old not feeling okay stuff and all that. And again, I was just like whispering it to Beck a little bit then, saying like, why do we always want to feel like happy, you know, when we're not feeling good? And it's like, when we feel good, we don't want to be like, oh, I kind of feel bad. It's just craziness, it really is. And it looks to me like it's got to be, obviously, all to do with our thinking and how much that is pretty ingrained in us. The sort of like worldwide consciousness of the human beings is just constantly, it's not okay to feel okay and we should be happy. So yeah, it was just like, yeah, I'm just seeing that just deeper and deeper again. And like, when I'm really not feeling okay and I can't even see the principles, then it does matter. But when I'm not, there's so much more times now when I'm not feeling good in myself and stuff and having off days and things, where there's just still that, there's just a little voice and a little nagging underneath saying, you know that this is perfectly okay and it's going to change again, because hello, how many times have you seen that? Yeah. So yeah, it's just amazing. It's great, isn't it?
Yeah.
Thank you, Lucy. Yeah.
You
want to add anything to that, Rudi?
No, I think that's fine just as it is.
Me too.
Yeah, I think like it does. There's parts of the human experience that it doesn't look to me like it's up for grabs to change that, and I'm so glad that it's not, because I think if it, you know, for me a while back, it would have been like Lucy was saying, I would, when I was feeling good, it was like, yeah, this is where I want to be all the time, always. I just want to be feeling good. And it's like if I had been in charge, I would have just kind of got rid of all those notes on the piano that we don't want any of them, we don't want any of them. And yet it looks more and more to me like the whole full-on experience is by far the best experience available. You know, it's great.
Well, I think also, Lucy, like, because we're a part of nature, because another word to call this life force is this force of nature, if you will. There's winter and there's summer, there's night and there's day, there's life and there's death. It's all these apparent dualities like playing out.
Right.
And because we're part of that, of course, we are going to get the apparent duality of feeling good and not feeling good.
Yeah.
It's kind of natural, really.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've seen the new Star Wars movie.
No.
Really cool bit in there where like this girl's reaching out for the Force, and the Jedi Master's like, well, what do you feel? And she's like, I feel this, you know, this amazing connection behind life, and then, but I also feel there's this darkness, and then there's this beautiful new life, but then there's death. Like, she was basically talking about duality.
Yeah.
But there's not really duality, and that's the thing we can't get our head around. There's just this one force dancing.
Yeah.
And humanness calls it start and end and birth and death.
Hence what we were saying earlier with the form and the formless again, yeah.
But without death, there wouldn't be life, and without life, there wouldn't be death. Like they're just an interplay, like this cosmic interplay of oneness. And we're it, animated, walking around with amnesia. That's what we are. And so, of course, it's going to play out through us because we're also part of that nature. And so, again, I think for me that the most beneficial thing I've ever had in the 13 years of being around this in this form is just knowing that there's nothing I feel that's abnormal. There's nothing that I'm feeling that makes me a certain kind of a person. I'm just human, and I can have a human experience just as it is, however it shows up.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, I think that's really good, because that's kind of, that points us back to the oneness, really, doesn't it? Because I think what we do is when we have these experiences, we do kind of say, oh, I'm the only one that feels blah, blah, blah. You know, I'm the only stupid one. I'm the only, whatever it is, we kind of separate ourselves out. And we always think that we are the only one who's felt that thing. Felt this bad, felt this scared, felt this stupid, felt this, whatever it is, we think we're the only one. And that again goes to separation. And when we just are, do you know what? I'm just like you. I feel scared sometimes. I feel good sometimes. I feel high sometimes. I feel low sometimes. And you know, I'm sure you've felt extreme hurt and pain and fear and sadness and happiness to the same depths I have on all of those things. And yet it is when we kind of say, do you know what, I'm different, I'm not right, or I'm not, because I'm not like you, I don't. And yet I think, like you say, as we begin to look in the direction of the principles and see this, what we see is that where we're all the same, where you are me and I am you, there just is no separation. It's just, yeah, you're having the same maybe slightly different, but the same experience as me, really. You're kind of going up and down, going sad, happy, whatever. We're the same.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it's that sameness, that commonality, that connection, that oneness of all of us, that is the liberating force behind life. They're all the same. As soon as you think we're not, as soon as you think we're a bit better than other people, or we're a bit different, or we've got it different from other people, it creates this illusion of separation, and it creates suffering and egotism. And there you've got all the ills going on in the world. You come back to that commonality and there really isn't a problem. It's just the experience unfolding as it is.
And that's what the principles are pointing us towards. This, like you say, it's an explanation of how life is exactly the same for everybody. It's just kind of, we have these different experiences, but actually the principles are bringing us back to that connection, bringing us back to that place of oneness, bringing us back to where we are the same. And like you say, that is our salvation, seeing that, because why would I destroy something that is me? Why would I? And then so it doesn't make sense to do anything but love and be kind and be helpful and be there when we're seeing the sameness in everything. It just makes sense to look after it and nurture it, because why would you not? Oh, that's lovely, thank you. Well, if there's anybody on the call, obviously if anybody does want to ask a question or make a comment, please, still feel free to jump in. But if anybody wants to carry on this conversation with you, Rudi, or get in touch or whatever, can you share your contact details, share what it is you do around the principles? What are you up to, and how can people carry on this with you if they want to?
Probably the best site, if you go to innatewellbeing.co.uk. I mean, I know that people may watch this recording years later, but at the moment, at the end of 2017, most of next year I kind of be off. I'll be out of it a little bit because I'll be doing filming and traveling and stuff. But people can always contact me through innatewellbeing.co.uk. Drop me an email, and if I'm around, I'll love to connect.
Well, I really, really, really appreciate you coming here tonight and having this conversation, because as I said, it looks to me like I used to be a little bit frightened of the world. I used to think it was full of, awful people and terrible things. And when I came across this understanding, I think, that's what I saw. I saw the oneness of it all. I saw the sameness of it all. And I just feel like I'm surrounded by really, really lovely people. So I'm really kind of quite keen to introduce all these lovely people to my friends, and to kind of spread that out, that do you know what, it doesn't matter where we're from, it doesn't matter who we are, just point us all back to that oneness and that sameness. So I really, really appreciate you spending the time tonight and coming here and talking to us and sharing what it is you're seeing. I really appreciate that. And I know that you have given so much, like with the movie site and the other stuff, and obviously now this film. So if there is anybody at any time listening to this who wants to help Rudi with his film in any way, I know, he would really, if you happen to know a director or a producer or somebody who's really would do this, I know Rudi would be really glad to hear from you. You've given so much to this community and to move this forward. So, and I know, as I said, when I first came across this, just knowing that the movie site was there really, really helped me. So thank you very, very much. So does anybody want to add anything or ask any questions, or is there anything you would like to add, Rudi? Or
Hi Deb, can I say something?
Of course you may, please do. Hello Judith.
Hi Debs, hi Rudi. I don't really have a question, but I've found this interview very interesting indeed. I missed the very beginning of it, so I'm absolutely going to go and watch this back straight away. I thought you were very interesting, and I just wanted to say thank you and yeah, very good. And I've looked on your website already, so yeah, excellent. Thank you. That's me done.
Thank you so much, Judith.
Yeah, I did share your website when people registered for this. I did share your website details, so if anybody does want to see any more about what Rudi's up to, that was there in those details. But well, thank you, Judith. That was lovely. So, has anybody else got anything they would like to add?
Just to say thank you, Rudi. That was really great.
Thanks, Lucy.
I've been lulled into sort of lulled into a different state. So is my dog. She's fast asleep on my knee.
Oh, bless her.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
All done then. Next week we are having a break, right, Deb?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah. I'm not very good at this side of things. Like, it's a good job that I have. Yeah. So next week, just for your information, on the what will the date be? The 27th or something?
Yeah.
Is that true? Yeah. On the 27th of December, we are not going to be doing a Lovely People webinar. We're actually just going to be doing some Christmas stuff with our families. So yeah, we won't be around. But then the week after that, we have got the lovely Ali Scott, I believe, is going to join us for the webinar. Ali is amazing. So if anybody wants to kind of go, just put her name into Facebook or into YouTube, you will see some stuff that Ali Scott's been up to. She's brilliant, amazing lady. So she's going to come and be sharing with us in a fortnight. So I hope everybody has an amazingly wonderful Christmas. And we will be back here again in a fortnight. So thank you, Rudi. Thank you very, very much for tonight.
It's my pleasure, and thank you for creating this. It's amazing what modern technology can do these days. And bless you, and thank you all guys for listening and being with us.
Thanks, Rudi.
Thank you. Bye-bye.